Hold on to your jingle bells. I'd like to talk to us a little bit today about a little thing called Christmas. And the thing about Christmas is you can't have Christmas without a four-letter word that starts with F. Fear. Fear. You actually can't have Christmas unless you have fear. And what I want to talk today about is that fear becomes a building block for us, a springboard, something that we can use, that God can use to develop and grow us. And it's not something to shy away from, but it's actually something amazing that God uses all throughout Scripture and history that can help you grow. It's pretty radical. Now, here's the thing. You might ask yourself, why does Jesus come when he does? I mean, why doesn't God bring Jesus himself to the world back in 800 BC? Why doesn't he come in 800 AD? Why doesn't he come in 8000 AD? What is it about 2,000 years ago that makes God say, I am going to bring Jesus to the world, myself incarnate, in this way? And the answer is easy. I don't know. But God does, and that's good news. And here's some thoughts that I have on the matter. What's going on with the people of God all throughout history, if you read the Hebrew Scriptures, is that they are constantly being tossed around, beaten around, taken over, exiled, captured, and acculturated to become something that they're not. God is constantly saying, I've made you to be beautiful. I made you to be wondrous. I gave you special gifts and abilities, and I want you to worship me, and together we will walk in unity and community. But instead, you have people who are constantly seeking to take them over. You have the Assyrians and the Babylonians and the Persians and the Greeks and the Romans, and they all say, you will adopt our behaviors. You will sing our songs, dress the way we dress, eat, play our games, worship the way we worship. And I want you to be something else, as if to say, you're not good enough as you are. Do you hear the fear behind that? I want you to come and you're going to become like me, because who you are is not good enough. We think we have a better way, and so we will force you through military might and through threats, through intimidation and through fear, to become like us. Now, we've got that today a little bit in social media, especially for our young people. This notion that we're not good enough and we should look and act a certain way and everything's perfect on Instagram. But back then, you've got that going on at the edge of a spear. Adopt our ways, be like us, because what you're doing is not good enough. That is the history leading up to the birth of Jesus. So it's been going on with these people of God, for years and years and years and years and years and years and years. The second thing that's going on around the time of Jesus is that religious understanding is so fragmented and broken. You have all these different competing ideas saying, we should pray to these gods of Assyria. No, you should pray to the gods of Babylon, Tiamat, and Marduk. No, you should follow the pagan gods of the Acropolis and the Greeks and the Romans. And, you should pray to yourself. You should follow your own heart and intuition. And you have the religious leaders of the time, like the Pharisees, Essenes, and Sadducees, saying, this is a more legalistic way to understand God. There's no grace and mercy here. All of these things are coming at everybody at once. All these ideas of who God is supposed to be. Are there multiple gods, many gods? Is God a figment of my imagination? What is going on? No one seems to know. And when you don't know, sometimes you invite fear. So the people of God leading up to the time of Jesus have been pushed around, kicked around, and been told at the end of a sword for their whole lives and all the generations before, you're not good enough. Become something different. Change who you are, or we'll kill you. And you have the one solace that is supposed to be the anchor and foundation of life in God muddied. Well, who is God? What has God led us to? That now we're in these prisons of Assyria, that now we're being taken over by Persia. Now Alexander the Great is seeking to change us. So I think it makes sense that God says, in this world of fear and uncertainty, it's time for Jesus to come, become a beacon of light and hope. Fear becomes a staging ground and foundation in which to build upon, in which there is a choice to grow. Think about Mary and Joseph. We all know the Christmas story, Mary and Joseph. And a lot of times we just herald them as these great champions, and to a degree that is certainly true. Mary is visited by the angel and says, you will bear God incarnate, Emmanuel, God with us. And Mary's like, okay, great, yeah. But can you imagine some of those conversations? Can you imagine this high context culture where everybody's a little, all these biddies, always yipping and yapping? That's what ancient Israel was like. Here is this unwed teenage girl pregnant. People are like, oh, Joseph, how could you? Well, it's not Joseph. It was a voice. A Spirit of God made me pregnant. Can you imagine what was going on? They could have said, no, we're not doing this. We're not leaving the house. Are you kidding me? What would people think? What would people think about us? The shame, the dishonor. What would people think about me? Fear could have stopped them in their tracks. And that happens with us all the time, don't we? We have fear run through our minds, run through our culture, run through our media. We're constantly being faced with things that are meant to make us afraid. And the takeaway is that it halts our tongues, it slows our feet, it stops our prayers. And we say, yeah, I just won't mess with that. That's fear controlling our lives. Imagine if Mary and Joseph went that route. But instead they say, we'll get through this together. God has something bigger. And so they took steps. They chose to use fear as a staging ground, a starting point to run a better race. And they go out. And as they're traveling, can you imagine through the arid landscapes of ancient Israel, through the hot desert days, the freezing desert nights, the fear they must have had of wild animals, of raiders, of dying, food insecurity. They didn't give up. They chose to use that fear to keep going on the race. Perhaps a lesson for us. The writer H.D. Gordon famously writes that you can't choose to be brave unless at first you're afraid. Bravery becomes this choice for us, and it has a prerequisite, and it's fear. Nobody's brave when they're not afraid first. You can't get to the point of bravery where someone says, man, I really admire your bravery. Wow, that was really an act of courage that you did, unless you have fear surrounding you, unless fear is a reality to you. So in that way, a weird way, fear becomes something that we can claim and say, okay, it's here, it's all around us. I feel it, I see it, I know it. And now I can choose to do something brave and courageous. I can choose to speak out, or to bridle my tongue and hold back, or to do something to advocate for justice, or to follow God, or to do something new. I can choose to be brave only when I'm initially afraid. Think about these wise men, the Magi, who are in their probably very comfortable spots wherever they are in the East. They're doing fine, they're comfortable, but there's something, some urge, some tingling from God that urges them to follow this bright light, this Bethlehem star, and to go and pay homage to a child they've never met and has done nothing notable in the world yet. And yet there's something in the midst of whatever reality they're living in, whatever fear and insecurities that they have, to choose to be brave and to journey westward to bring these lavish gifts of a king to lay at the feet of the manger. The choice to be brave. Think about the Bethlehem star itself. It's this bright, shining beacon of hope. This light that follows us, but the light is only light. It's only shining, it's only radiant if it's surrounded by darkness. You can only follow a light and be a beacon that truly shines, to let God really shine through and make some differences in your life and the world, if you start with being surrounded by darkness, uncertainty, fear. The night sky is the backdrop to God's shining star of hope. So if you find yourself in a place that you feel like you live in a reality that is surrounded by fear of COVID, fear of politics, fear of economic stability, fear of isolation, all these things that we know and we live with every day. Know that. That is the kind of canvas that God paints on. That is the kind of springboard for you to jump and to choose to be brave. That is the kind of night sky that the stars of Bethlehem guide you through. And so you're in good company. Scripture says that God did not give us spirits of fear, but ones of power and love and self-discipline. There's something about trust that goes against fear. To trust that there's something bigger, that there is a star to follow, that there is something worthy in the manger, that you will get through the desert wilderness that you're walking through, that you are bigger than all of the yip-yap of society around you. There's something about trust that lets go of that control of fear. Think about the times in your life that you chose to act upon that. You might be afraid of flying. And so you don't get on that plane to go to Germany to visit your great aunt Gertrude Liechtenstein to have her amazing pumpkin and date muffin mix. Or maybe you are afraid of flying, but you trust that the engineers and people that put the plane together will actually get you across the ocean. And so even in the midst of fear, you take that step of bravery and you choose to trust. If you've ever gone rock climbing, you've got the harness all strapped up and you had that first step, that very first step off the back of the ledge. You're afraid. But if you trust in what's supporting you, then you still go. That cute girl or that cute guy that you've been making eyes at for so long, you're so afraid because you don't want rejection again, but you decide to talk to them for that first time because you trust that you can get through whatever answer they give back to you. The times that in the midst of fear, we choose to trust and follow something. That's what Mary and Joseph did. It's something for us to model and consider. That when we fight against fear, it's by us choosing to be brave. There's something tender and something holy about that. I don't know about you, but for me, it tends to be a future hypothetical. We're not usually afraid of what's right in front of us. We're afraid of what could be. We're afraid of what we're going to get on the test, as opposed to when we're taking the test. We're afraid of going to the pool because we might drown, as opposed to when we're actually in the pool and realize that's not so bad. We're afraid of these things of what could be, and so we let it control our minds and our hearts, and we get so anxious and insecure about it that we mull it over time and time again. It becomes this paralyzing factor. Imagine if the wise men said, you know what, I don't know, I'm not going to travel west. There's bears in the desert this time of year, and I'm just not going to deal with the bears. And so they don't go. Mary and Joseph afraid to leave the house, to face society that speaks poorly of them, the kind of defamation that they think could ruin them. What if they said, the fear of what if is too much? You've got a jealous governmental leader in King Herod during the time of Jesus that is promoting things like infanticide, who is insecure about his own power and wants to use spies and skullduggery to root out this character of Jesus of Nazareth. There's always going to be the dark sky around us. There's always going to be the reasons to hold back in fear. There will always be that. And what we have found time and again is that when we're silent, when we hole up in the corner, when we retreat, things get tough. People get hurt. We lose the spark of faith to say, I will follow the star. So think about the things that are going on in your heart today. Think about this Christmas that is so different than any other Christmas we have had. The ways that it is far from ideal for being with the ones that we love and we trust and we follow. Perhaps this year we can make a renewed pledge to ourselves and to God to say, in the ways that I perceive the Bethlehem stars in my life, I promise to try and consider taking the steps, choosing to be brave, because I don't want to live in fear anymore. I don't want to spend my life worrying about everything, because I know the path that leads to. I know the hard nights and the tears that leaves me, and I know the feelings of anxiety that it leads me to. I've been down that road. So if you've been down that road, there's another option. And the good news is that God is always good. And the good news is that even if that fear is present, that's just the starting line you need to choose to be brave and to go somewhere better, to be better. God has made you beautiful and gifted, and he loves you too much to leave you like that. So he invites you to journey. He invites you, the shepherds, to come and see the Christ child. He beckons you by a choir of angels singing, saying that in the town of David, to us a child is born. You're invited to step away from fear. You are invited to step away from fear and to go somewhere else, to be somewhere else, and to understand that God walks with you hand in hand, leading you with a Bethlehem star that is shining against a world of darkness, to be a beacon of hope in your life, to calm your heart and to bring you to a new place where you too can sing the praises of the Christ child. Peace and love, brothers and sisters.